Hello friends, welcome to Navkar Digital Institute. Me CA Tilochna. I am faculty at Navkar Institute. Friends, in today's topic we will discuss about the MTP of Economics CA Interlevel. Right? So we are discussing about MTP, which is for November exam. So let us start with. I'll be dealing with economics portion, which is of 40 marks. So yes friends, first let us see the paper. Section B is economics for finance. We know that in this starts from question number 7. Question number 7 is compulsory and we have to answer any 3 questions from the rest. And working notes should form parts of the respective answers. So question number 7 is compulsory. It is compulsory question. In 7 we have 4 questions, that is compulsory. Question number 7, 10 marks, right? And answer any 3 questions from the rest. Next, question number 8, 9, 10 and 11, we have to answer any 3, right? So you can select any 3 from that. So let us start with question number 7. Question number 7a. Assume in an economy, saving function is this. This is the saving function. And autonomous investment is 50 crore. Find out the equilibrium level of income and consumption. If investment increases by 5 crore, what will be new level of income and consumption? So this is our first question, number 7, subsection A. It is of 3 marks. So friends, first of all, in economics paper, we will be expecting practical questions, right? Yes friends, so this is saving function. Autonomous investment is 50 crore. Find out the new equilibrium level of income and consumption. If investment increases by 5 crore, what will be the new level of income and consumption? So this is our suggested answer. We know that saving equal to investment, right? So this is function which is given and investment level is said to be 50. So if we elaborate this, minus 10 plus 0.2y, we can get y, that is 300 crore, right? So if we have y, we can put this in equation, C equal to y minus s, that is income minus savings. So if we put this in equation, minus 10 plus 0.2, 300 equals to 50, right? So we can get C is 250 crore. So with the increase in investment, so this is the equilibrium 250. If the investment is increasing by 5 crores, the new investment will become 55, right? Before it was 50, now it will be, if it is increasing by 5 crore, so it will be 55 crore. So again we will put this in equation. So we get y equals to 325 crore and C is y minus s, 325 minus 55, that is 270 crores, right? So this is the new level if the income is increasing, if the investment is increasing by 5 crores. So this is 3 marks question. Equation has been given. So S equal to I, saving equal to investment. So we can find Y, right? If we have, then we will put this in equation. We can find C equal to Y minus S. So that comes to 250 crore, and if the investment is increasing by 5 crore, the new investment will be equal to 55 crore. So again we'll put this in equation. So C will be 270 crores. So friends, just this is very simple question of 3 marks. Now next question 7B. Are health and education pure public goods? Comment. So whether health and education, it is a pure public good? Comment. This is 2 marks question. It is a 2 mark question. Health and education pure public goods, yes or no? So our answer is no. See, what is written in the suggested, we will use that language only in our examination. It will help you in scoring good marks. No, health and education, they are not pure public good. A pure public good is non-rivalrous and non-excludable in nature. Therefore, education and health services are not pure public goods. Rather, they are quasi-public goods that possess nearly all of the qualities of the private goods and some of the benefits of public goods. It is clearly possible to exclude people who do not pay from availing these services. So it is not a pure public good. Now what is a pure public good? First let us understand that. So friends, first let us define what is a pure public good. So a pure public good, a pure public good are those that are perfectly non-rivalrous in consumption and non-excludable impure public goods are those that satisfy the 2 conditions to some extent but not fully. See, a pure public good is having these 2 characteristics. First one, it is non-rivalrous in consumption, and second, it is non-excludable, right? So non-rivalrous means everyone has access to use them, and non-excludable means non-excludable is that type of good that we cannot exclude anyone from using it, right? So pure public good is having that characteristic, but health and education is not pure public good, they are quasi public goods. They have some characteristic of private also and some of public also. So it is quasi public good, right? It is 2-mark question. Next question now. Question number 7C, which is of 2 marks again. Why does measurement of money supply essential from a monetary policy perspective? Why does measurement of money supply is essential from a monetary policy perspective? Explain. So why it is essential to measure money supply? So measurement of money supply is essential from a monetary policy perspective because it enables a framework to evaluate whether the stock of money is consistent with the standards for price stability, to understand the nature of deviations from the standard, and to study the causes of money growth. So it is important, it is essential to measure money supply because it enables a framework to evaluate whether the stock of money is consistent or not, right? And it helps to understand the nature of deviation from the standard. So whether it is deviated from the standard, we can know that, and to study the causes of money growth. So for these reasons, so in this answer, we should write these 3 points which are important: to know consistency, to understand the nature of deviations, and to study the causes of money growth. These 3 lines should come in your answer, right? This is 2 marks question. Next question now. Question number 7D. Which technical measures are applied to protect human, animal or plant life from risk arising from additives, pests, contaminants, toxins or disease causing organisms? Explain with an example. So which technical measures are applied to protect human, animal or plant life from these risks? Explain with example. This is 3 marks question. So sanitary and phytosanitary measures are applied to protect human, animal or plant life from risk arising from pests, contaminants, toxins or disease causing organisms, and to protect biodiversity. These include ban or prohibition of import of certain goods. So certain goods import are prohibited. All measures governing quality and hygienic requirements should be taken. Production process and associated compliance assessment should be taken care of. For example, prohibition of import of poultry from countries affected by flu. So if the country is affected by flu, we should prohibit the import of poultry, meat and other processing standards to reduce pathogens, residue limits for pesticides in foods, etc. So these measures should be taken to protect the animal, human or plant life, right? This is a 3 mark question. So in this answer, what are the important points you should take care of? So first is ban or prohibition of import of certain good. Second, all measures governing quality and hygienic requirements, production process. So this is your second point, and this is the example you will write. So 1 mark you will get for writing the example, right? 1 mark will be given for example and 2 mark will be given for the content. So friends, this was your question number 7. Now coming to the next question. Question number 8A. How do governments ensure that market power does not create distortion in the market? This is 3 marks question. So how do the government will ensure that market power is not creating distortion in the market? So market power This is our suggested answer. Market power is an important factor that contributes to inefficiency due to higher prices than competitive prices. So if there is a market power, so we know that it will increase in efficiency due to high prices. Because of the social cost imposed by monopoly, we know that market power, if there is a monopolist, he will charge more prices, there will be inefficiency. So because of the social cost imposed by monopoly, governments intervene by establishing rules and regulations designed to promote competition. So government will try to stop this by promoting competition and prohibit actions that are likely to restrain competition. So if any actions that is restraining competition, that will be stopped. Policy options also include price regulation. Government can also do this, can put the price regulation of certain products which are very essential. That maximum prices that the firm can charge. So for government can put the maximum price that the firm can charge for the product. And possible inflation and productivity growth. These are some methods by which the government ensures that market does not create distortion. So government can put some measures, like government can put the price control on the product. Government can try to prohibit monopoly and increase competition in the market. So these are the steps government can take to stop the monopoly, right, or to stop the market power. Right. So this was our 3 marks question, and in this 3 marks we should take care that we should include in our answer that first, this is very important to mention, because of the social cost imposed by monopoly, governments intervene by establishing rules and regulations designed to promote competition and prohibit actions that are likely to restrain competition. This line is very important in your answer. Then second point, policy options also include price regulation. So these 2 lines are very important in your answer, which should be there, right? This was answer number 8A. Next, question number 8B. Do you think money is a unique store of value? 2 marks question. Money is a store of value. So our answer is financial assets other than money are also performing the store of value. Just as money has, the financial assets have fixed nominal value over time and represent general purchasing power. Therefore, money is not a unique store of value. So our question was, is the only money store of value unique? No. There are other financial assets also other than money which has this function of store of value. So our answer was no. So just money has, financial assets have fixed nominal value and they represent general purchasing power. Therefore, not only money is not only a unique store of value. There are other assets, financial assets also, right? So only no you will not write. You will mention the reason also, right? So this was question 8B. Next question, question number 8, subsection C. Countries China and India have total of 6,000 hours each of labor. So there are 2 countries, China and India, and they have 6,000 hours of labor. Each day they have 6,000 hours to produce shirts and trousers. So both the countries, they want to produce shirts and trousers and they have 6,000 labor hours. Both countries use equal number of hours on each day, right? 6,000. China production is 1,000 shirts and 300 trousers per day. So China is producing 1,000 shirts and 300 trousers per day. India produces 300 shirts and 200 trousers per day. So in the absence of trade, which country has advantage in producing shirts and trousers? And which country has comparative advantage in producing shirts and trousers? See, this type of practical question is generally asked. This 5 marks question. So you want to know that which country has absolute advantage in producing shirts and trousers, and which country has comparative advantage in producing shirts and trousers. So we know that first of all, this is the information which was given to us. Goods produced by each country. We talk about China. China is producing 1000 shirts, 300 trousers per day. India produces 300 shirts and 200 trousers per day, right? And each country, we know that 6000 hours of labor and there, and uses 3000 hours each for both the goods. Therefore, number of hours per unit on each good. So we can find if China is producing 1000 shirts and 3000 hours, so we have total 6000 hours, 3000 for both, right? Means 6000 divided by 2. So 3000 they are using for shirts and 3000 for trousers. Right? So if we see that if China is producing 1000 shirts in one day, 3000 divided by 1000. So in 3 hours, China will produce one shirt in 3 hours. And trouser in 10 hours, one trouser in 10 hours. Same way India, if we calculate, so 3000 divided by 300, that is 10 hours for each shirt India needs. And for trouser, 3000 divided by 200, 15. Since China produced both the goods in less time, you can see China is producing both the goods in less time. It has absolute advantage in both shirts and trousers. So China is producing very less time. China is producing one shirt in 3 hours and one trouser in 10 hours. But India is producing one shirt, they need 10 hours. And for one trouser, they need 15. So obviously China is producing both shirts and trousers in less time. So it has the advantage in producing both shirts and trousers. Comparative advantage if we do, so compare the opportunity cost of both the goods we have. Now we are doing comparative analysis. So if China is producing shirt, so per hour they need, for one shirt they need 3, right? So if China is producing one shirt, so they cannot produce, India cannot produce. If they are producing one shirt, the opportunity cost is 0.3. And opportunity cost of trouser, if we calculate, so opportunity cost of shirt, if China will produce shirt, they cannot produce trousers. So opportunity cost of producing one shirt is 0.3 trousers. And opportunity cost of one trouser is 3.33 shirts. Same way if we talk about India, if they are producing one shirt, they cannot produce 0.67 trousers. And opportunity cost of trouser is 1.5. So for producing shirts, China has lower opportunity cost. Therefore, China has comparative advantage. And for producing trousers, which has less opportunity cost, India has lower opportunity cost, right? Therefore, India has comparative advantage. So means in China, if we are producing one shirt, you cannot produce 0.3 trouser. And if you are producing one trouser, you cannot produce 3.33 shirts. And in India, the opportunity cost of shirt is 0.67. And opportunity cost of trouser is 1.5. So if we compare it, so China has lower opportunity cost for shirts, producing shirts, and India has lower opportunity cost for producing trousers. Therefore, India has comparative advantage. So this way our answer will be. This was question number 8C, right? So friends, now coming to the next question, question number 9A. Calculate GDP at market price and derive national income from the following data in crores of rupees. So you have to calculate GDP at market price and derive national income. So this information is given. Inventory investment, exports, indirect taxes, net factor income from abroad NFIA, personal consumption expenditure, gross residential construction investment, depreciation, imports, government purchase of goods and services, gross public investment, gross business fixed investment. So this much data has been provided. We have to calculate national income from the following data in crores of rupees. So to calculate GDP at market price, personal consumption expenditure plus gross investment plus gross residential construction investment plus gross public investment plus government purchase plus net exports. So that will be 11325 crores GDP at market price. So to calculate net national product at factor cost, that is national income, is GNP at factor cost minus depreciation. GNP means GNP at factor cost is equal to GNP at market price minus indirect taxes, right? And GNP at market price is GDP plus NFIA, right? So we will calculate GNP at market price is 11250 crores and GNP at factor cost is 11100 crores. So GNP at factor cost is this much. So NNP at factor cost, that is national income, is GNP FC minus depreciation, that is 11100 minus 100, that is 11,000 crores. So here just you have to apply the formula. So national income is net national product at factor cost is GNP at factor cost. This is GNP at factor cost and this is 100 is depreciation. Next question. Question number 9B. Define near public goods. Is it desirable to keep people away from such goods? Give comment. This is 2 marks question. Near public goods and is it desirable to keep people away from such goods? So near public goods, they are education, health services, medical, etc. They have all the qualities of private goods and some of the qualities of public goods. So they are near public good. Cost C, I can say. It is easy to keep people away from them by charging a price or fee. However, it is undesirable to keep people away from such goods because the society would be better off if people consume them. This particular characteristic, namely the combination of virtually infinite benefits and the ability to charge a higher, results in some near public goods being sold through markets and others being provided by government. As such, people argued that these should not be left to the market alone. So we know that near public goods, they have almost all the qualities of public good and private goods. So we can keep people away by charging a higher price. However, it is undesirable to charge a higher price, right? So it is good if people consume them. This particular characteristic, namely the combination of benefits and the ability to charge higher price, result in near public goods being sold through markets and others being provided by government. So obviously it's having more benefits, so people need it, and if you charge higher price, it can be sold in the market and some are provided by government also. As such, people argue that these should not be left alone to the market. Next question. This was only 2 marks question. Now C question, write a note on CRR. Explain the operations of CRR, cash reserve ratio, which is a 3 marks question. Yes friends, next question. Write a note on CRR, that is cash reserve ratio. Explain the operation of CRR. So what is cash reserve ratio and explain the operation of CRR? It is a 3 marks question. It is 3 marks question. So cash reserve ratio, we know that it refers to the fraction of total net demand and time liabilities of scheduled commercial bank in India which it should maintain as cash deposit with the Reserve Bank. So CRR means the out of total deposits, it is compulsory that commercial banks need to maintain some reserve with Reserve Bank. Higher the CRR, lower is the credit creation capacity of banks. If CRR is more, means they have to keep more reserve with the RBI, so they can give less of loans to the general public. Reducing CRR during deflation results in expansion of credit by banks and increases the supply of money available in the economy. Increasing the CRR during inflation helps in containing credit expansion, right? So if banks increases CRR, if RBI increases CRR, it means now banks can give less of loan, and if CRR rate is reduced, it means banks can give more of loans, right? So this was our question of 3 marks. Next question number 10A. Define common resources. Why are they overused? Define common resources. Why are they overused? So what is common resources? Common access resources or common pool resources are a special class of impure public goods which are non-excludable. Means we cannot exclude anyone to use it, as people cannot be excluded from using them. These are rival in nature and the consumption lessens the benefits for others. If one will use, the other will not get. It's like, since price mechanism does not apply to common resources, producers and consumers do not pay for these resources and therefore they overuse them and cause their depletion and decay, like natural resources. So common access resources are special class of impure public goods which cannot be excluded. They are rival in nature and their consumption lessens the benefits of others. Since price mechanism does not apply to common resources, producers and consumers do not pay for these resources and therefore they overuse them and cause their depletion and degradation. This was question 10A. Next question, second, this was only 2 marks question. Next, explain the free rider problem. Give examples. Explain the free rider problem and give examples of that. So incentive to let other people pay for a good or service, the benefits of which are enjoyed by an individual, is known as free rider problem. Now for free riding is a benefiting from the actions of others without paying. Example is national defense. Government provides defense for all citizens. We all are safe, but we are not paying, right? Another example is Wikipedia. Few people contribute, but everyone gets the use of it. That is known as free rider problem. Means everyone is using, but all are not paying. That is free rider problem. The incentive to let other people pay for a good or service, the benefits of which are enjoyed by everyone, is known as a free rider problem. In other words, free riding is benefiting from the actions of others without paying. Example is national defense. The government provides defense for all citizens regardless of how much they contribute in taxes, right? Some people are contributing in taxes, some are not contributing, right? but benefit everyone is getting. Another example like roads also, not everyone is paying taxes, right? People having very low income, they don't pay tax, but they are using it. That is free rider problem. So now next question, this question was 3 marks question. Next question 10b, distinguish between leakage and injection in circular flow of income. So what is the difference between leakage and injection in the circular flow of income? Leakages are withdrawals from the economy as a result of taxation, spending on imports and monetary savings. It reduces the flow of income. On the other hand, injections are additions and contribution to the economy through government spending, money and export, investment made by firms. Injections increase the flow of income. So injection will increase the flow of income and leakages will decrease the flow of income, right? So leakages are withdrawal from the economy as a result of taxation, spending on imports and monetary savings. It reduces the flow of income. On the other hand, injections are additions and contributions to the economy through government spending, money from exports and investment made by firms. Injections increases the flow of income. This was second question. Next question 10c, differentiate trade related investment measures and trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. So differentiate trade related investment measures and trade related aspects of intellectual property rights. This is a 3 marks question. So trade related investment measures is an agreement on trade related investment measures which specifies the rule that are applicable to domestic regulation a country applies to foreign investors. Agreement is applicable to all the members of WTO. It expands disciplines government investment measures in relation to cross-border investments by stipulating that countries receiving foreign investment shall not impose investment measures such as requirements, conditions and restrictions inconsistent with the provisions of the principle of national treatment and general elimination of quantitative restrictions. On the other hand, trade related aspects of intellectual property rights is an international agreement among various members of WTO on intellectual property rights. It is one of the most comprehensive multilateral agreement on intellectual rights. It stipulates most favored nation treatment and national treatment for intellectual properties such as copyright, trademark, geographical indications, industrial designs, patents, layout designs and undisclosed information. So these two terms, that is trade related investment measure and trade related intellectual property right, they both are different. So trade related investment measure is an agreement on trade related investment which specifies that the rule that are applicable to domestic regulation a country applies to foreign investors. And trade related investment measure is an international agreement among various members of WTO on intellectual property rights, right? So both are different. It is TRIPS, that it is for intellectual property rights, and TRIM, that is trade related investment measures. Now next question, question number 10a, explain the Fisher's quantity theory of demand for money. This is a 5-mark question. Fisher's quantity theory of demand for money. So next answer. According to Fisher, quantity theory of money demonstrates that there is a strong relationship between money and price level, and the quantity of money is the main determinant of the price level of the value of money. In other words, changes in the general level of commodity prices or changes in the value or purchasing power of money are determined first and foremost by changes in the quantity of money in circulation. Fisher's version, also termed as equation of exchange or transaction approach, is formally stated as follows. M is total amount of money in circulation, V is transaction velocity of circulation, and T is total number of transactions. Later, Fisher extended the equation to include bank deposits and the velocity that in the total value of supply of money. So equation was changed like this. This is V is velocity of credit money. Since full employment prevails, the volume of transaction is fixed in the short run. Briefly put, the total volume of transactions multiplied by the price level represents the demand for money. The demand for money is equal to supply of money. In any given period, the total value of transaction made is equal to PT, and the value of money flow is equal to MV plus M dash B dash. So that was explained in the chapter. Now moving to the next. Next is 3 marks question. How are the following transactions treated in national income calculation? What is the rationale in each case? First is expenditure by government on providing free education. Next is second is capital gain on sale of a house, and third is mineral wealth of a nation. So how are the following transactions treated in calculation? This is a 3 mark question, 1 mark each. So first was expenditure by government on providing free education is included. This is included while estimating national income, as it is part of government final consumption expenditure. Since the service provided by the government are not sold in the market, the only way they can be valued in money terms is by adding up money spent by government in the production of the service. Next is second, capital gain on sale of house is not included, as it is already included in the year when it is built, and to avoid double counting it is not included. So in this question, capital gain is not included. Expenditure by government is included, right? Next, third one. Third was mineral wealth of a nation. If it is mineral wealth of a nation, it is part of national wealth and is not included in national income. However, that part of mineral wealth which has been extracted during the current year, that which is extracted during the current year, that will be added under product method. But as it is a nation's wealth, it will not be added. Total will not be added, but which has been extracted during the current year, that will be included. I hope it is clear. Next one, 11th second, define contractionary monetary policy or differentiate crawling peg and crawling bands. So first one is define contractionary monetary policy. This is in our 2 marks question. Contractionary monetary policy is a policy used by monetary authorities to contract the money supply and reduce economic activity by raising interest rates to slow the rate of borrowing by companies, individuals and banks. So contractionary monetary policy It is a policy used by monetary authorities to contract the money supply, to reduce the money supply and reduce economic activity by raising the interest rates, to slow the sale of borrowing by companies, individuals and banks. Next one is next question, which is the last question of this paper. Differentiate crawling peg and crawling bands. Currencies adjusted periodically in small amounts at a fixed pre-announced rate in response to changes in certain quantitative indicators. It is called crawling peg. On the other hand, when currency is maintained with certain fluctuation changes, margins, around a central rate that is adjusted periodically is crawling band. So if it is adjusted periodically in small amount at a fixed pre-announced rate in response to changes in certain quantitative indicators, it is crawling peg. And on the other end, when currency is maintained within certain fluctuation margin, that is crawling band. Now let us write some note also on this crawling peg and crawling band. So we will write that a crawling peg is a system of exchange rate adjustments in which a currency with a fixed exchange rate is allowed to fluctuate within a band of rates. Crawling pegs are often used to control currency moves when there is a threat of devaluation due to factors such as inflation or economic stability. So crawling peg is a system of exchange rate adjustment in which a currency within a fixed rate is allowed to fluctuate within a band of rates. Crawling peg are used to control currency moves. So yes friends, these were our answers of our paper. MTP October 20 economics. So this was our last question. So yes friends, this was our paper. In this paper we know that one question is compulsory and any three from the rest. So in exam you can start with from any question which you feel easy, right? And out of 4 you can attempt, you have to attempt any 3. So you should attempt that questions which you feel that you know very thoroughly. If time permits you can add other question, but that should be in the last, right? So this is our paper. We know that in our economics there are total 4 chapters. 40 marks it is. We can expect that from each chapter 10 marks questions will be asked. From each chapter weightage will be approx 10 marks each chapter. So friends, we have to give importance to each and every chapter, and it's direct, you cannot solve this MTPs. First you should see all the video lectures of our respective faculty members, then only you can easily solve these papers. And solving the past papers will help you to know that which type of questions are asked. So it is important that you to solve all the past papers, MTPs, RTPs, so that you can easily know which type of questions are asked and which type of practical sums are asked. You know that many practical questions have been asked in the past papers. Like I can say, this type of questions are almost asked in the exams: comparative analysis and absolute advantage. So you should practice these questions. It is of 5 marks, and these questions are also almost you can find in every paper. Calculate GDP and national income from the given data, right? So this type of questions are also generally asked in the exams, right? So friends, here we complete our paper. So thank you so much. Thank you for watching. Have a nice time.
If you like this video, share it with your friends. Subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch more such videos and learn from our expert faculty members. Press the bell icon to get regular notifications whenever we upload a new video. Download NDI mobile app to get complete CA course online. We value your support. Thank you for watching.